Thanks to Flow for sponsoring a portion of this video. What happens when you take the speed of a sports car, the elegance of a luxury car, capabilities of a rock crawler, and you put it into one truck? There's an old saying, jack of all trades, master of none. And you might think combining all these categories into one automobile might not be possible. You gotta remember there's a second part of that saying, and it goes, jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than master of one. This is the Rivian R1T, and in a sea of a lot of electric vehicle competitors, this one truck is packing more capability and variety than anything we've seen before. And Rivian thinks the R1T is the key, that this is the best EV you can buy no matter what you need it for. You've probably seen your fair share of Rivian R1T videos by now. I know I've watched a ton of them, touting how good or not good the truck is, both on or off-road. And as somebody who's been driving EVs now for 8.5 years, this is one that I've had an eye on for a while. In fact, I have a deposit down to buy this truck. I was keenly excited to drive this, to get behind the wheel and see how it performed. So when Rivian reached out and asked if we wanted to borrow a truck for a week to film, I couldn't say yes fast enough. And I went in when we picked this thing up to decide, is this a car that I want to own? Is this a truck that I want to put my money behind? And is it a company that I believe in? So there are a lot of things done well with this truck. One area that is very split is the design. And like with everything, some people love it, some people don't. The headlights are interesting. I'm in the category where it has definitely grown on me. Rivian created a really unique looking truck, but didn't try to reinvent the wheel. But looking around this thing, there's a lot to unpack about this. Obviously it's a truck and has a bed, but there's a lot more beneath the surface. So first, it's got a powered frunk, which is a feature that I think every EV should 100% have, and it makes an incredibly useful and really usable space. Coming around the side of the car is, I think, one of the most unique things that I have seen in the automobile space in a very long time. And I'm not gonna belabor it. You've probably seen a billion videos on it, but I'm talking about the gear tunnel. It's a storage area that kind of goes behind the cab and in front of the bed that gives you extra storage space. There's a kitchen that you can buy to put in there. There's rails you can buy to put in there. There's a bunch of things that you could do. It's lockable space, and it is awesome. It just adds extra utility and something that was really, really new. And you open it from the bed. There's a button that you push. It pops open like a little bit. You gotta kind of dig your nail in there and pull it open, and you could stand on it. The doors that open up are load bearing. They leave up to 250 pounds. You can stand on this thing. You could get your kids ready for soccer on this thing. You could stand on it and put things into the bed or on the roof. Awesome to have. But moving along to the bed of the truck, there's a bunch of buttons, like I mentioned. So on either side, you've got a button that will open the gear tunnel. And if you keep moving back, on a lot of configurations, at least the one shipping now, you've got a button for a power tonneau cover. And it does what you'd expect. Comes out and goes back. It's kind of cool. It stacks itself up inside of the bed. It takes about 8 seconds or so. I love the fact that it's powered, certainly not like load bearing, don't jump on it. And it's mostly water sealed, but some stuff could sort of ingress on the sides. I love that there's a power tonneau cover. It was great. It means when you lock things up in the bed, it's covered, and when the truck is locked, that tonneau cover is locked as well. On the left side, next to the tonneau button, there's the one button that's gonna open the damped tailgate. I wish there was also a button on the right-hand side to open it no matter where you are. It comes down pretty slowly. It is not powered. A lot of trucks, at least on the higher end, do offer that. Ford Lightning, for example, is one that offers sort of a power up tailgate. It's a little strange, there isn't like a place to hold it, like a handle or something to push the tailgate up. You gotta just put your hands right on the paint and push up. But it does go up easily, it's light, it's simple. It's also load bearing, which is really nice. So the bed on this truck is 4.5 feet. And then with the tailgate out, you get a little over 7 feet of load bearing storage. So I don't know if that's enough for you. It's certainly not a full size truck. It's a little bit bigger than some of the mid-sized trucks like a Tacoma, but that's up to your usage, whether or not it's gonna be enough for you. Over 1,000 pounds of payload, which is nice, and this thing can tow up to 11,000 pounds. So Rivian is giving you 4 keys with this too, which seems like a lot of keys. So you got a key fob, it's a carabiner and does normal key things. You also have a key card, which we've seen on Teslas for a while. You also get a active bracelet where you can kind of put on, it's got the RFID thing in it like a key card, but it's waterproof, and you hold it up to the door and it opens. And of course you have a phone key as well. No matter what you use, when you walk up to the car, the handles will present themselves. They kind of come out at an angle. And it's awesome, it works well. What was a bit strange, well, there's no way to actually unlock the car from the handles. So you can't, if you have the key in your pocket and you have the proximity turned off, you can't just like push the handle or let it know that you are there. It was a small quirk. Build quality of the outside, I think, was a big concern for a lot of people. So first, in this VIN, and it was mid 3000s, there weren't any creaks or any panels that I could really push in and I could really feel that they weren't connected properly. That was nice to see. There were some panel misalignment, especially on the hood side. That may bother you, that may not. If you take delivery of one of these trucks, obviously you want to look at it closely and try to get it fixed if you see it there. But at least be aware, while Rivian is clearly trying, they are not perfect when it comes to those things. I think I should disclose, in the interest of honesty, I have never driven a pickup truck before. So I had zero idea like what to expect going into the R1T. I've driven electric for 8 years, but this is a whole different beast. I don't camp, I don't tow anything, and I don't really have anything to haul, except for maybe, some Costco runs here or there. So I was totally like a blank slate going into the Rivian and kind of going into this week-long odyssey. So let's start with the default way that you drive the car. You get it in all-purpose mode, which kind of it's a good mode for most things. I have the ride set to soft. You can control the suspension that way, and I've got brake regen set to high and stability control obviously on. But there are other modes that you can select. So there's a conserve mode to get the most range, obviously, and that deactivates 2 of the motors and then lowers the car for better aerodynamics. There's also a sport mode that will stiffen the suspension and give you the most responsive throttle control. There's also an off-road mode that, well, we'll get to that, I promise. But these modes drastically change the way the truck feels when you drive it. But I have loved every second of being behind the wheel of this thing. Everything about it feels incredible. And depending on the configuration, the tires you get, this theoretically can go from 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. This truck weighs over 7,000 pounds, so to feel that acceleration, which probably with these shoes was closer to 4, is nuts. I've driven a lot of electric cars with crazy acceleration, but when you feel that instant torque in a truck that weighs 7,000 plus pounds, that's a different feeling. That is a very different feeling. And I know a lot of people get caught up in just the 0 to 60 time, but feeling that 0 to 60 in something that weighs this much is incredible. I think equally important is the, when you're going 30 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, and then you floor, you want to pass something. How much power is on tap is bonkers. And you compare this to, say, like the current most powerful truck right now, the Ram TRX. This is like almost double the horsepower. Like not quite, but close. And it feels like it. Like even like right now, like, see you nerds. That is fun. And it's crazy to have that fun in a giant truck and then do it in a giant truck where you don't see the, the gas going all the way down to empty. And nothing that big should ever go that fast. I was shocked at how fast this car was, and I was equally surprised by how quickly the truck stopped. I wouldn't expect, and I wouldn't want necessarily a truck like this to feel like a Porsche 911, like something small and nimble. It feels like something like big and nimble. So this car obviously has cameras and sensors built in, and it's got a driver assistance feature called Driver Plus. built into it. Now, I guess the best like analogy, like let's talk about it in terms of like, let's say autopilot terms. So it only works on highways, and the caveat there, it only works on pre-mapped highways, and they're improving it, and there's more that are coming. If you are on a pre-mapped highway, it will do lane keep assist, and it'll do your distance control from the car in front of you, and it'll keep you in the lane. And it does a pretty decent job with that. You can control via the steering wheel the follow distance or the speed that you want. But it does work well. There were some tighter turns it had some trouble with, and it disengaged or asked me to take control. That's one area that I expect to see pretty drastic improvements in. Software update over software update as more roads either get mapped, they open it up to non-mapped highways. But it did work well. Probably makes this amongst some of the easiest to use, I'm not gonna call it autonomous, but like driver assistance features that are out there. And charging the car is a big question mark. I think that's a huge reason that a lot of people are gravitating to Tesla. Their supercharger network, while definitely not perfect and sometimes congested, has a success rate that is generally pretty good and clearly the best of all the EV spaces. Rivian, like any other non-Tesla, has to rely on public charging stations. So your Electrify Americas, EVgo's, ChargePoint, and the rest of those. I can't say whether or not that's going to be an option for you. Perhaps you do a lot of road trips and you're worried about charging stations going down or being too busy. That is a legitimate concern for a lot of people. When I did go to public stations, it charged fast and it worked as expected, but your experience and location is going to 100% absolutely vary on that. But I will say for the ability to charge at home, it takes away a lot of the fear and the range anxiety a lot of folks have, especially when they get their first EV. So the Rivian does ship with a mobile charge cable, but the most efficient way to charge any EV is with sort of a home charging solution. So the one that I've got, that I've been using, is actually this video sponsor. It's the Flow Home X5. So it's actually built with 100% aluminum, and it just feels nice. It's a weird thing to say, but like, you touch it, you feel it. It feels like quality. It doesn't feel like cheap plastic at all. The handle locks in place, which is nice. I've got this installed in my garage, but this thing is built to be installed anywhere. So it's got protection against corrosion and UV wear down, and also will give you complete weatherproof charging. And it can operate from -40 degrees Fahrenheit to 122 degrees Fahrenheit, which is nuts. So with the Flow Home X5 charging station, it comes with a really robust app that first of all will let me control when my car is going to charge. So that was really awesome. You can also see over 55,000 public charging and level 2 and fast charging stations across North America inside of that app. If you want to learn more about Flow, you're on the wait list for an EV and want to get your home set up and ready to rock already, we'll put a link to it down below. This truck has no business driving as smooth and as well as it did. My use case is on-road driving, and driving this truck on the road is just half of the story.
You're right, John. That is only half the story with this truck. And what I'm most interested in is how this does off-road. Is this really the adventure vehicle to beat all adventure vehicles? Oh, by the way, my name is Matt. I make videos here. In fact, I'm making this video that you're watching now. And I do a little bit more off-roading than John does, so I'm taking over this part of the video. So there are three things to keep in mind with the Rivian R1T. One is its off-road capability. How good is it? Two is how does it do as an adventure vehicle when it comes to its accessories, its functionality in terms of storage, all that kind of thing that's really important when you're out on the road. And third is, this is an EV. How does an EV do in those situations? We've really never had a car like this before. And let's just say in one word, this is impressive. First, let's just talk capabilities because I think that's most important. You want to be able to get where you're going and get home safely. Now, I was never really doubtful that this truck would be able to do a lot, especially just reading all the specs and everything that it can do, and well, it didn't disappoint. We took it on a few trails that were rated moderate. We wanted to push it a little bit, but we also don't want to break the truck. And on these trails, we had a mixture of sandy washes, we had rocks, we had ledges, everything that you would expect on a trail, and it handled it perfectly. There was never a time where it felt like this truck was struggling, even though there were some very steep inclines, some very big ledges where we did actually bottom out once. And even then, the car just kept going and it didn't phase it at all. Now, I think one of the reasons for that is because of the different drive modes. The off-road mode in this truck actually does something, and it does it really well.
The main thing I noticed is just the overall compliance, and no better place is that demonstrated than on a washboard road. This is a road with a bunch of little ridges, so when you're driving along it, it rattles everything. It's just very uncomfortable. But when you go into off-road mode, it just completely soaks up the bumps. And when you go between the standard mode and the off-road mode, it's a night and day difference. Now, when you are in off-road mode, you have a few different options available to you. You have an auto mode where it will just detect what you want. You have a rock crawl mode for those more intense obstacles. You have a rally mode, which is great for those back roads that you just kind of want to let it rip on. And of course you have a drift mode, which is kind of self-explanatory. But each one of these that you select actually makes a noticeable difference in the drive. Another thing to go along with that suspension is the ride height. That's one of the great things about air suspension is it's variable. So on the street, you can have it in a really low mode, whether you're in sport or conserve. But when you go into off-road mode at its highest, it goes to 15 inches, which is a ton for a stock vehicle. For reference, a Wrangler Rubicon is 11 inches from the factory. So that is a ton of ground clearance. Plus on the bottom, it's completely flat. You don't have to worry about differentials. You don't have to worry about exhaust or your oil pan. Nothing is going to hit and scrape, and that's just one of the benefits that you can't get from really any other car. All of that paired with the 4 motors on each wheel mean that when you are going over obstacles, you just feel confident. That's really all I can say. It feels confident and like there's no drama. And it's really hard to show what these obstacles look like in real life, but the things we were doing did not stress the truck at all.
So when it comes to capabilities, this truck gets a pass. I think it's going to do more than really any of the owners, at least the initial owners, are ever going to do with it. And even then some, if you really want to push it, this truck can handle it. And that brings us to the next thing, which is all the adventure related features. And this truck is packed with a ton of them, and they're all actually really thoughtful and useful.
The absolute best little gadget is the built-in air compressor. When you're going off-road, airing down your tires is important. It gives you more traction and also gives you a more comfortable ride and makes it less likely that you're going to puncture a tire. So when you do that, when you get back on the road, you then have to pump your tires back up, and usually you have to bring your own compressor, but this one's built into the bed of the truck. It's underneath this flap. You open it up and just select what pressure you want, and then the hose is stored in the gear tunnel, so you can just plug it into each tire. It reaches all the way around to each one. You set it on and it just pumps itself up. You don't have to pay attention to it. You don't have to think about it. Once it reaches the pressure, it stops and you can change it to the other tire. And of course, this doesn't just work with tires. It's an air compressor, so you can use it to blow up other things as well. And it's awesome. Another thing right below that is gear guard. Again, when you're traveling and you have a bed of a truck to store things in, there's eventually going to be something valuable. So in the front, there is a cable that plugs in to the gear guard system. You plug one into the truck, route the cable through whatever is valuable that you want to keep secure, plug it in on the other side, and then it locks and you cannot remove it until you unlock it. Now on the other side of the bed, again, filled with features here, you have 2 AC plugs, which are great. On our little excursion for the day, it was getting late, and we decided to make coffee the fancy way with an electric kettle, a grinder, all things that require power. Just plug it in and it works. And I think the last thing in the bed that's really nice for especially off-roading is the spare tire holder. It's underneath the bed, so it's nice and hidden, doesn't get in the way. But usually when you have a tire this big, you don't keep a spare somewhere hidden. You either have to mount it somewhere or just not have a spare, which is not a good idea when you're going off-road. But the fact that you can just keep it here all the time in case you need it is great, and it's a full-size spare, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you don't need a spare, say you're not going off-road anytime soon and you don't care about having a spare tire, well, you can just use this space for storage. You don't even have to order the spare tire if you don't want. And the space is waterproof and even has a drain so you can clean it out if you need to. Now all these features are the ones that were just on this truck, but of course you have options that are coming, like the built-in camp kitchen that goes into the gear tunnel. That would be great to have, and it's all electric so you don't have to worry about propane or anything like that. And there's also the crossbars that you can install either on the bed of the truck or on the roof of the truck and add things like a rooftop tent. Rivian clearly has thought about this being an adventure vehicle, and the accessories that they pair with the truck are a home run.
So from a capability and a utility standpoint, the Rivian R1T knocks it out of the park. I can't really think of anything else on the market that does everything this does as well as this does. So that is great. But that still left the most pressing question for me, at least, which was how is an EV going to do in a, more remote wilderness type of environment? Sure, it has all the capability to get you places, but doesn't have enough charge to actually get you back. And I think this is the best way to sum it up. When I went into it, I was very cognizant of what the range was, but towards the end, I started to trust the truck. And as long as you know there is a charging destination where you are going, either in the beginning or in the end, if you know that you have infrastructure, you're gonna be totally fine. So for our particular test, we charged up to 90% around 11 a.m., which was when we were starting the day. We then went through the deserts, up hills, over ledges, all the things we already talked about. And then we went through Joshua Tree National Park, all the way from the bottom to the top, and we filmed everything along the way. So it was a pretty long day. And by 8 p.m., we were left with 70 miles of range. And that was a very accurate 70 miles. The trail we did was 25 miles long, and then we had to go all the way through Joshua Tree National Park. So this was a lot of driving, and all of it was off-road with aired down tires, and it was great. There was really no issues with it, and that surprised me. But where the issue comes in isn't with the truck itself, it's just with the infrastructure. There are plenty of places that you go, especially when you're going to remote, more wilderness-oriented environments that don't have fast charging infrastructure. Sure, you might be able to charge overnight at a hotel or with a typical charger overnight, but that's not really what you're looking for when you're on a road trip or going somewhere. You want fast chargers, and those are just hit or miss depending on where you go. So in the Palm Springs area where we started our day, plenty of Electrify America or charge point chargers, no issues there. But at the end of the day, when we went through Joshua Tree National Park up into 29 Palms, the city there was a charge point charger, great. There was a charger, and it was technically a fast charger, but it was only 60 kilowatts. So we had to sit there, and we just took the choice of charging a little bit so we can get to a faster charger. But that's just one of those things you have to be cognizant of. You can't just assume that a charger is going to be there. But I think Rivian knows that because they're building their Rivian Adventure Network. So hopefully when you go to these more remote places, there will eventually be something from Rivian, so you don't have to worry about it. You know where you're going, there's going to be a charger, charge up, do your adventure, and you're good to go. But overall, this truck is just straight up impressive, and everything we put it through, it passed with flying colors, no issues whatsoever. It did leave me with one question though, and that is just aftermarket support. The truck as it is great and it's super capable, but in the adventure off-road community, aftermarket is all the rage, and I'm not really sure what you're going to be able to do here. The brake calipers are huge, so you're not really going to be able to fit a smaller wheel to get bigger tires. Plus with the air suspension and lowering up and down, if you do put bigger tires, they probably won't fit, so there's issues there. Would you be able to change your suspension if you want? Well, probably not, because it's so integrated into the entire vehicle. Could I install a front bumper and a winch if I needed to recover myself, especially since this is a 7,000-pound vehicle and you're gonna need to get yourself out eventually? All of these things are questions that I have for the future of the car, but as it sits now, out of the box, the way you buy it, it's probably my favorite truck that I've ever driven.
Pretty much everything that you throw at this truck makes you feel confident in its abilities, but the one area I was really cognizant of was the interior quality and functionality. So this is the first time that I had ever seen the Forest Edge interior. It's a green interior, and it actually looked really nice. I don't think I would pick a green interior, but it was very kind of cool to see. And sitting in this truck, I found it to be incredibly comfortable. These seats felt great and cushy, all that kind of stuff. I was really impressed with how comfortable I was in the seats. And the big litmus test, at least in my life, is my wife. She has 2 herniated discs in her back and is very rarely comfortable in most cars or SUVs. and she found these seats to be very comfortable. So to me, that was a giant win. The first thing I did when I got in here was like push stuff around and kind of feel things to be, check on the build quality, because I critique things professionally. I found the build quality really good. I didn't find any creaks or rattles. Things seemed put together really well. Now, granted, I only had the truck for a week. Maybe things would have fallen off in 2 weeks. I doubt it. This is a really well thought out interior, and I liked how it looked, and I liked how it felt. But most importantly, I think it had to be practical. So I have 3 kids. I can't drive anything that I can't fit 3 kids in the back. This thing is ginormous in the width department. I could fit any combination of booster seats, car seats, rear facing, front facing, anyway. If you have kids, 1, 2, or 3, you'll be able to fit all of them in the back of this thing without any issue at all. The back seats are really wide. There's a decent amount of legroom in the back, but not a huge amount. My knees didn't hit. Like I said, I'm like 5'9", 5'10". For me, it was totally fine. I could sit in the back without any issue. If I was like 6'2", 6'3", my knees maybe would have hit a little bit, but certainly very comfortable in the back seat. There's storage everywhere in this truck. You got storage in the doors, giant open space in the middle. You got a big storage bin in the armrest. That's super nice. What is slightly weird is there isn't any glove box. Not a huge deal, but something I was looking where I should put my paperwork. Got to find another spot for that. I don't know why. There's no glove box. There's a little bit of storage underneath the seats that maybe you could use for that. It kind of pops out. Just seemed like a strange omission. So also kind of hidden in that center console, if you know where to pull it out, is a full camp speaker that doubles as a lantern, a battery charger, and automatically paired to your car giant Bluetooth speaker. So inside of the truck, you have 2 displays. You've got a 12.3-inch driver's display. It was really nice, high resolution. I love the fact that the navigation showed up in the left side, but you can change what shows there if you want. The big story though is to the right of that driver's display, you've got a pretty nice size 15.6-inch display where everything you're going to do is going to happen on the truck. I'd watched a lot of Rivian videos, and I had seen people in very early builds talk about lag and how it wasn't very fast. This UI was blazing fast. When I touched stuff, things popped up. When I was pinching and zooming, it was pinching and zooming really quickly. The best compliment that I can give Rivian was this was as fast a UI and as responsive a UI as I have ever seen in a car. And for the most part, relatively intuitive. Now there are some things that I would change, and I imagine will change. The only clock in this thing, for example, was in the upper right-hand corner in very tiny numbers, so it's kind of hard to see the time. A weird thing. You also get a little media slide in when you're on other menus. It's supposed to be used to control, your play or pause and that kind of stuff, but it's right aligned, so it's all the way on the right. So I don't have the longest arms in the world. I gotta kind of do this to reach it. I think it would have been nice if that was left aligned. There's kind of a dock on the bottom, but only the icon on the bottom right is dynamic to the last thing that you checked. I would have loved to have a customizable dock here. Controlling the voice here is Alexa, and she works really well for controlling car stuff. When it comes to controlling your phone stuff, it did get a bit squirrely, so I'm talking about voice dialing and sending text messages when driving. Also important to know, there is no support right now, or planned support as far as I know, for Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. Another area that can definitely be improved is the wireless charger. So it's right there in the center console, and the placement's actually fine, but as soon as you start driving, because this car's got so much torque, the phone tends to slide around, basically making it borderline useless. Not quite as useful as the setup the Tesla has, but at least it works if you just keep your phone in one spot. And this list of critiques, I'd say, are very easily addressed. I mean, these are software fixes that I imagine Rivian is very aware of and will make the changes. There's a lot of cameras happening here as well. So cameras that are meant to help you with off-roading, help you park, and just generally not hit things. So it's got a front camera and a rear camera, and they work and they show you what's there. The quality of the camera, it's not gonna win any HD camera awards. You can certainly see things, but definitely looks a little grainy and not high res, so to speak. Now, maybe that's a software thing, maybe it's a hardware thing, I don't know. But considering how not great those cameras looked, what did look shockingly good was their 360 camera, kind of their top-down camera. That quality was absolutely outstanding. In fact, that sort of bird's eye camera wasn't something that even launched with the truck. That was something that came after over the air. So things are improving as you go through and sort of more OTAs start to hit, like Teslas and sort of the new generation of EVs. These things are always improving and getting better. This truck, to me, was an eye-opening experience. I came in with no expectations, not really expecting anything about this, and I left with a gigantic smile on my face. It is weird and quirky, and it is imperfect, and certainly not for everybody, but the more time I spent with this, the more I thought it was for me. In fact, after this video's wrapping, I actually loved the truck so much, I took delivery of my own. And there'll be a full owner review coming soon, where I'll get into much more detail about the truck and things I've noticed over the months that eventually I'll have of ownership. But I'm excited for adventures with it. I'm excited for road trips with my kids, to maybe go camping, and to drive something that is a truly different experience than anything I have ever driven. It may not be for you, it might not be for everyone. Maybe you want to wait for their SUV, the R1S, or the more mass appeal of all their vehicles, and did not feel like a first effort from a new company. Now, I have faith that Rivian is going to be here for years to support this truck and service this truck. They had recent price increases, which I know rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, myself included. And they tried to make that right and learn from those mistakes, but again, your decision if it's worth the money for you. And like we said at the very beginning here, for a truck that's trying to do a lot of things well, I was shocked that they actually did a lot of things really well. I loved this thing, and I can see this being a truck that I drive very, very happily for a very long time.